Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show, we'll have a talk about a Linux project, such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment, or application. We also chat about the news or any variety of topics from the community. I think anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the openSUSE project. And with me today, I've got Prophetic, Schickel, Eric, Jinda, Zebedee Boss, Colin, and Eris. How is everybody?
I'm doing great. How are you, Nate?
Excellent.
I am really excited.
Okay.
I am.
Why?
Well, I go on vacation tomorrow, starting tomorrow. So I'm headed your direction. I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So just on that, just some quick housekeeping. There won't be a Linux Saloon next week because I will be driving back home.
Yeah, you don't want to do that in the car, do you?
I mean, it could be entertaining. I mean, the show's already kind of a train wreck from time to time anyway. Why not make it a full-on car pileup? I'm kidding, of course. I like my van. Be sure to do the straw poll that Eris has taken the time to carefully and delicately craft for this fine community of tech enthusiasts. So the links should be in the the YouTube chat. And if you can click on those, do that straw poll, that would be fantastic. Well, on the docket for today, we're going to talk about that straw poll, do our open mic night, talk about what's going to happen in 2 weeks from now, some housekeeping, our last call. But first, what have you been doing in Linux or tech? Colin, you put some notes on here that got me all perked up and excited. You've been testing openSUSE on VirtualBox. How's that going?
I've been testing openSUSE on VirtualBox for a little while now, and now I've taken that off VirtualBox. I'm actually testing out FerrinOS Alpha, so he's got a long way to go, but I just thought I'd see where he's at. But I've been running, I've got a Surface Go, and I was running the Rolling Rhino Remix, which had the GNOME desktop. So GNOME desktop works reasonably well on the Surface Go. Then they've changed to XFCE, so I've got rid of that, put Endeavour on there. But then I thought I would try openSUSE because there's only a certain amount of distros that boot on the Surface Go. I don't know what it is. It must be what people have within the boot structure of the ISO, possibly. And to my surprise, openSUSE actually booted up on the Surface Go. So I've installed openSUSE with the KDE desktop. So I thought I'd go completely the opposite way. And it's been, so far, a really good experience.
Oh, excellent.
KDE has come a long way. And at first, I couldn't use the touch screen. Nothing was working. When I looked at the info, I was running X11. So I logged out and switched it to Wayland, and smooth as everything just worked. So I'm just that's another thing. Wayland has come a long way, and it was good to see that everything was working. Really nice touchpad and every touch screen and all with Wayland, and some gestures as well. Haven't gone too far into that, but I've been impressed with KDE, and I've never really been able to get along with KDE, but I've been watching. Steve mentioned the other week, Nico Loves Linux. He's a developer for KDE, and he has a YouTube channel, and he's got this widget called the Plasma Layout Saver, and you just mess around with and get your desktop looking the way you want. You save it, and then if you mess it all up, you can go back to where you were. So that's a really handy little widget. So I've been really getting into it, and it's good. It's running well. So I'm thinking about changing that on my desktop, but I'm not sure yet. So, but just testing. But
Gotcha.
It's been a fresh change. Yeah, it's good.
Well, that's really fantastic. I think anytime somebody has a great experience with a distribution in a desktop environment, I think that's awesome across the board, no matter what. The fact that you're having a great experience with openSUSE, to me, just takes it up to like 11 for me. So it's pretty
Well,
awesome.
I did try putting the community in when I first started using openSUSE, and it didn't come up with the extra libdvd CSS or whatever it is and all that stuff. But now there must have been something wrong with the repos, but now they're showing up no problem. So you can just add those repos with a click. Before it was actually command line because it wasn't showing up for some reason in the what is it, the repository one that you use with openSUSE in the YAST thing. But that's now working, so that's good. So just a few clicks and those extra repositories are in there, so that's handy. But the OPI that you told me about, that is really handy as well. That's a handy little
that's really
command
nice
line tool.
Just OPI codecs, and it pulls all the codecs you need in. It's like
absolutely
easy peasy lemon squeezy, or OPI and whatever it is you're thinking, and if it doesn't see it, it doesn't exist. Then you might have to go to Flatpak. But
the way that Nate feels when you have a good time with openSUSE is how I felt when you were like, Wayland was the fix. I was like, yes, let's go.
Yeah, that one really surprised me. Because I do use Wayland on desktop. I haven't made a video for such a long time, but I always had to switch back to X11 because if I put like text or something within KDE Live, it would come out really huge when I rendered the video under Wayland. So I don't know whether that's still the case. I'll have to try that out. But yeah, GNOME's been annoying me lately, and I get the feeling that the moving parts within Arch that I'm running at the moment, something's going to happen sooner or later. So it looks to me like openSUSE has a bit more stable rolling, which is what I've been looking at. A stable rolling release that I don't have to reinstall, that'll keep going. Nate was saying he's been running his for like 10 years, so I thought maybe it's worthwhile looking at.
Not rolling for 10 years. The longest one I have running for is like 2017 or 18 going steady.
Right. Okay.
Still very
That's still
impressive.
pretty good anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you have a good experience with Plasma, Colin. I've kind of felt the same way. I started using it last month and I can't quite shake it right now. This is what happened to me with GNOME last time when I switched. I played with it and I started using it, and then I had every intention to go back to Plasma, and it was just like it's stuck, and Plasma's doing that right now where I feel like I want to go back to GNOME because I'm comfortable there and I'm missing some things from GNOME, but I'm sort of like, every time I think about I'll get away from Plasma. But yeah, it's like there's just something about the functionality, the way the tray works, the way the notifications, there's just so many things that are, they just feel like they're better thought out. There's so much functionality, right? It's so deep in terms of like capabilities, whereas GNOME's famous for removing that and simplifying, simple. One way to do things, which I still think is not a bad thing necessarily, especially for the right person. But yeah, the more work I've been doing with, websites and config files and servers and things like that, it just sort of, Dolphin is such a better file manager than Nautilus. And it's kind of stuck to me right now. I'm very curious to see what happens. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, there's something with Nautilus. I don't know. It seems to be slow and clunky. I've been putting up with it for such a long time, but when you're copying things and it just seems to take forever. Even the Nemo file manager's always been my favorite. And like it was either I go back to Linux Mint, Cinnamon, or it was try openSUSE with the KDE, because I tried to look at Cinnamon on openSUSE, but for some reason that's fallen behind. So I just thought I'd try the KDE. But I'm so used to using the GTK applications. I think that's where my mindset gets stuck, because I'm not used to the KDE applications. The only thing that I had to use when I was testing openSUSE was I had 2 disks in the VirtualBox, and I was trying to actually put everything in the FS tab for the other disk. It was just a data drive. The only thing that worked really well was GNOME Disk. That GNOME Disk is such an awesome tool. It works better than anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. 100%.
There's no reason you can't still use your GNOME applications in Plasma. There's not a single thing inhibiting
Not true.
that. So you can always.
True.
I mean, I run a lot of GNOME applications all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
and there's no problem. At least if there
not,
is.
not only is there
I've
not
noticed.
a not only is there not a problem, but this is something I've noticed is it's almost democratic in a way where Plasma's like, I don't care what you run, you know, and that wasn't always the case. GNOME used applications, especially when they switched to client-side decorations, were horrible, right? It just didn't work. They were broken. Now that they've done that work, like you can run any application on Plasma, and with a few exceptions that I can think of, everything just sort of is homogenized. It all looks right. Versus GNOME, like, yeah, if it's GTK of the right kind, if it's an old GTK, it might not work right. But if it's anything new, yeah, it looks great. But if it's Qt or, you know, Qt or anything else, like, nah, you got to probably go through some different configuration changes. You might have to install another theming system like Kavantum or something like that. Like, there's a lot of work you have to do to get that consistency on GNOME. Whereas Plasma's just kind of like, whatever you're running, that's cool with me, you know. I'll be right back.
And that's pretty much why I only run GTK apps, is because I can't deal. I don't even want to bother with trying to patch everything. I'm just like, you know what? I'll find a way to do this in some alternative app. I'm good.
Yeah.
It is a headache for sure, but KDE does that so well. And part of that is it's a toolkit level thing. It's just inherently built to be much more flexible. And there's like benefits and downsides to both, but I really like what they've been doing. Like KDE is in a really, really good spot right now. I've been running it on Asahi for a little bit, and it is absolutely. It's probably not as good as it is, you know, running it on x86 hardware, where everything's working super perfectly. But I'm very impressed by it.
But what you've got to remember, gents, sorry, as well, is that we are all tinkerers. We all love messing with the systems to get them just the way we want them to be. What we all tend to forget to do, I think, is look at the defaults and would they work for your average Joe Blogs, your person who just wants a laptop to turn it on, click, you know, Firefox, get onto Facebook, God forbid, and do whatever it is that they've got to do. We all mess with our systems. So some of the questions we should be asking is, what do we think offers the best defaults? What just works? And forget all of our tinkering, forget all of our cynicisms about all that round corner isn't quite the same aspect ratio as this, and that title bar is actually 1 millimeter bigger than the one over here, and that application doesn't match that. Your average user's not going to care about that. They're just going to want to be able to click on things and do they work. And I think all of the default desktops do that in one way or another. They just work for people who don't care, and then it's just down to you choosing which flavor do you like the look of the most. We get into the real deep dive stuff. We go into, can I change my GTK settings? Can I change the borders from round to square? Can I change my font because I like comic script and all that sort of stuff? But everybody else just wants to turn it on and use it, I think.
Yeah, and on that, I think there's only one user that I know of that has ever cared about that all the pixels are in the right spot, Zeb.
I couldn't possibly remember who that might be.
One pixel off. Just one.
Which makes me laugh because, you know, I have Christmas lights on my house, and when the first time I installed them, I had one pixel that was slightly off. And I looked at that and I laughed and I thought,
this is perfect.
Rocco would have a hard time with that.
So the one thing that impresses me with KDE at the moment is they've got this desktop overview that acts a little bit like GNOME as well, which I like. I like that scenario because I use it quite a lot. And now that that's in KDE, and not only that, KDE on the desktop, you just start typing and it finds so many things that seem to be very accurate as well. So there's a couple of things there that are favourable to the way that I use the system. So, and not only that, I like the notifications a bit better than GNOME as well. GNOME notifications becoming very annoying lately. So, and I don't know whether
like it when it just stays at the top of your screen and doesn't go away ever.
Painful. But not only that, when I connect this Bluetooth, it won't connect straight away, and it just keeps popping up and popping up and popping up. It's just annoying. It drives you.
It's part of the
just
charm.
takes away focus. Oh, yeah, I suppose. It's just one of those things that's why I just thought I'd try something a little bit different and see how I go. So I haven't tried Bluetooth on the Surface Go yet, but I might do that today, see how it goes.
On your point about openSUSE booting up on it, I that is something about openSUSE that I have always very much appreciated, is that they have some insane level of just hardware support out of the box. I mean, it has like layers, so it'll like try booting in one thing, and if that doesn't work, it'll be like, all right, we'll try this, we'll try that, and then it'll be like, okay, well, what if they're using like a terminal over the network? Let's set up for that. Like, the whole setup process for openSUSE is like, check every potential possible option and make sure that it's usable, and then, click with it. If it works, and fall back to the next one if it doesn't. It's very impressive. I really, there's not much that openSUSE doesn't run on.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like, you can serial console into something and boot through a serial console because it'll
cool.
It detects, it's like, oh, there is no display, so okay, we'll do this. So it's almost like there's, I mean, it's not, but it's really trying really hard to make sure it can install. It's really giving it the whole grade school try.
It's openSUSE is one that I would never have thought of trying on the Surface Go, because that Surface Go, I've tried a lot of distros, it doesn't even recognize them. So because I'm at the point at the moment where you just put in a USB, it'll either boot or it doesn't boot, and that's only the third one that I've tried. So Arch works, Rolling Rhino Remix, but I haven't tried the new one. But I don't think I want to try XFCE on a Surface Go. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I just thought I'd try openSUSE, and yeah, it works really well out of the box. So impressive stuff. See how we go.
I am really glad to hear you're having a great time with openSUSE, or just any distribution, really. When I hear that someone's having a good time, I really do. I like to hear that.
He's not biased.
I am biased. Actually, I'm highly biased. I'm just saying, yes, I'm excited about openSUSE, but truly, if you're telling me you finally got something to run on your Surface Go that was weird and esoteric, I'd be excited too. So, but that's what happens when you're a technology enthusiast.
Yeah.
I want to welcome some faces that popped in here, or rather one face and 3 avatars. So Ulfnick, Mark, Adam Grubbs, Vince, so good to have you on this. Well, I guess for Vince and Colin, it's the morning of the 21st. But for the rest of the world...
Howdy. What happens when your avatar is a face?
That's a good point. It's a static
Monkey
face.
wrench.
I'm a penguin.
You told me the story about how your daughter drew that for you, and so I always appreciate seeing that. Just saying.
I'm always reminded that he couldn't have drawn it.
No, I could not.
Well, excellent. If you have not yet done the straw poll, Eris did a couple of straw polls. Those links are in the chat right now. Go ahead and click on those and knock them out real quick. And if you have any comments you want to put on there, I guess just put it in YouTube, maybe. Or you can put it in Telegram too, I suppose. He may not see it. I won't see it. But that straw poll. Those straw polls, I should say. Well, Eris, one is a continuation from last week. How was your experience with VIM and VIM Tutor Bin? How has that one shaken out?
Okay, let me refresh one last time.
I'm going to click on it too.
33% said not interested in this exploration.
That's the highest I've ever seen for not interested. Fantastic. Yes. I love it.
And then 23% said Tux Penguin. And 16% said It is amazing. Config files are no longer a chore, but an opportunity. 13% said didn't have enough time, busy with work, busy with life. 10% said it is good. 3% said did not have a good time with it. 3% said other. And I think we got more votes, but that's pretty much stays the same. And like I said, the only reply I got for that one was I thought Vim tutorial was watching some of DistroTube's videos. And then we have the other poll, which is, do you remove those stickers of your tech purchases? And for that one, I got 22% said I forget about them. 19% said tick them off on day one. 19% said I don't mind them. 50% said take them off, but not day one. And 11% said other. 8% said I keep them on so I can easily resell the hardware later. And 8% said Tux Penguin. For replies, I got stickers get pulled unless pulling would somehow make the computer look worse. Another reply I got was other. It depends. If it is a Windows sticker, it is quickly removed. If it's an Intel or something about the hardware, I leave it. I then add some openSUSE stickers to make things groovy. I honestly would love to know the background on why those stickers were needed in the first place, or if it was some sort of legal thing. And and then I got another reply that says, and where do we provide other details for the StrawPoll, please? So I post the StrawPolls in Telegram, Discord, and Matrix, and you can reply to the poll, and I'll get a notification, and I'll just document it. And like I said, I won't name names. Everybody's anonymous, but your reply will be stated during the show. Another reply I got was, which stickers of my tech purchases is this asking about? Like the hotkey instruction sticker on my KVM, the Windows Vista sticker that could be carefully removed and stuck on a Raspberry Pi, the sticker on my laptop that says Intel Core i7, the plastic things that cover your screen, the barcode sticker on the bottom, the sticker on my NVMe drive that lists the part number and the capacity. The time to remove, if at all, would vary greatly depending on what sticker purpose it is. And then I replied, it's all up to you. And that's how these polls always are. Your answer depends on you. There's no right or wrong answer. I try to give the poll some ambiguity because I can't be that specific. Otherwise, the poll is not going to work. And I did find this article. I'll post in the chat. And it talks about the origin of stickers. And some of the highlights was that Microsoft tried to boost its branding game by stickers, but it didn't always work. And then AMD tried to make a separate sticker for gaming PCs while wooing buyers with Wi-Fi chip brands. And we also got this reply on Telegram. And this was from Quora, so it's not really like an article like the other one, but it summarizes, I guess, what the stickers' origins are. And it was, first, they tell consumers what's inside the PC, and well-known brand names are meant to inspire confidence. Second, they show the PC manufacturer has met the requirements of a logo program. Some of these are commercial, but they can be useful. For example, the Windows 7 logo program required PC makers to make these systems run 64-bit Windows 7. This eased transition from the mainly 32-bit to mainly 64-bit sales. Third, PC makers get some sort of kickback for using stickers, generally in the form of support for advertising or promotions. PC makers can, of course, design PCs with however they like, with any specifications they like, and they can install any software they like. Apple does. So as Apple does, I guess. So can any manufacturer who wants to ship Unix, Linux, Android, whatever machines, or sticker-free Windows machines. Microsoft and Intel tell PC manufacturers what to do. However, they can use the logo programs to ensure minimum specifications, improve the quality of components, and encourage the use of preferred technologies. With Windows 7, these include 64-bit OS, Bluetooth 2.1, PCI wireless host controllers, wake up on LAN, and other things. These benefit consumers and promote compatibility without preventing PC manufacturers from innovating.
That was quite the response from that
I
fella.
always peel off the Bluetooth 2.1 sticker. That's the first thing that goes.
Still, I think now you might want to keep it for like, I don't know,
Might be worth
posterity,
something now.
at this point.
But don't you find people liking stickers is a bit like people who debadge their cars? So you get people driving around in these tweaked out BMWs, trying to make them look like an M series,
Yeah.
and they're actually not, but they take all the badging off because they then try and trick people that they are. And again, it's just down to personal choice, isn't it? I mean, I look at my laptop and I want it to be nice and clean and clear and nothing that gets in the way. And I find with laptops, why on earth do you put a sticker where my left hand is going to rest on the empty space so that I can type and use the touchpad? Because within 2 months, my wrist has rubbed the flipping thing off anyway, so it's all curled up and nasty. And that's the main reason why I take these stickers off from day one, because I don't want them curling at the edges when the laptop gets used. But all of those things that we talked about were perfectly valid. I mean, I like the one about I leave all the stickers on so that if I resell it, everybody knows what it's got. So yeah, there's pros and cons for everything, but interesting subject. PC stickers.
I've actually bought laptops that didn't have any stickers on it, and like the Windows and Intel stickers and all were actually on the power brick. Thought that was interesting.
Who made
That's
that?
clever.
What manufacturer did that?
That was an Alienware laptop.
Oh,
that did
That's
that.
kind of
They didn't
cool.
have any of the stickers on the deck or anything, and that was all on the power brick.
So
The power brick could have fit many stickers. It was big, but they just didn't put it on the laptop itself. I thought it was kind of interesting because it was like a soft touch like thing that gets greasy when you look at it. But I think Eric's well familiar with that with his XPS, I'm sure.
Yeah.
With the
I've had
heat,
so many
affect the
laptops
sticker?
were the. Sorry.
Sorry.
Alex. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, would the heat affect the sticker because it's the power brick?
I don't think so. I mean, it stayed on there. Stayed on there for about, I don't know, 6 years until I gave it to my brother.
That soft touch stuff. So I've had several laptops where it actually just wore out in where my palms were, which looks really, really nice. And I also had a BMW 3 Series from the early 2000s where they sprayed that, like I guess the factory to apply it probably sprayed all the pieces, and the Florida heat just decided it was going to make it nice and sticky. And so I ended up having to just take alcohol and remove all of it from all of the interior pieces, and it looked fine. Oh, it was gross. I mean, you'd touch like a knob and it was like your fingers would stick, and it was like everything had soda spilled on it, or it was really nasty.
That's great.
Sounds very General Motors of them.
The follow-up question to this poll should be, when you get motherboard parts or internal parts for a custom built PC, do you stick all of those on your case?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean,
that is
you
could do a poll for next week.
I have my AMD Ryzen sticker, right here on mine. I've always liked that. I've always, found places, even if it's not on the outside, like if it had a door that opened, I would always make sure I had the stickers somewhere on the unit, just because, I don't know, they gave me a sticker.
I like to stick them on the wrong things, like things that don't actually contain those parts,
like a gas pump.
Yeah, or put like a Ryzen sticker on a netbook or something, like that kind
well,
of
whoever
thing.
suggested putting it on a Raspberry Pi, that was beautiful.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Eric, you mentioned a sticky 3 Series, and it reminds me of my last car. So what BMW and Mini by extension do, because they're BMW as well, is they have this stuff called Cosmoline, which they fill up the inside of all the little cracks under like the hood and all little areas to sort of protect it from corrosion. Well, it is so hot here that all of that stuff just starts seeping out from the little holes in the hood, and so you'll just go out to your car one day and there'll just be this goo all over your car that if you don't remove will permanently stain the plastic.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I asked a dealer one time, why do these cars, in particular German cars, seem like the plastics and the adhesives just give out after a certain amount of time? And his answer to me was, and I don't know if this is entirely true, but they are forced to use materials that are biodegradable and that at some point will start to break down. Which makes sense, except that you hope that it's not while you're still driving the car.
I need it to last me at least till I leave the driveway.
I guess most people lease them, so I don't really think about it, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Isn't there greater waste, though, in having parts that degrade on you and you have to replace them?
But cars are already one of the most highly recycled things that we use, right? I mean, they when they take a car to a graveyard, they rip everything out of it. You can reuse so much of it as, reclaimed. I mean, they're not, in some cases, yeah, you have part picking places that will reuse the parts themselves, but when they go to junk it, they rip the engine, they rip the transmission, they rip all of the wheels, the body, the interior, like everything comes out of it. And so it seems a little unnecessary to have that kind of planned obsolescence, but I think Adam's right. Like, climate is a big factor. Germany doesn't have the kind of heat that Arizona and Florida do.
Yeah.
But don't you think as well, the newer cars get to those graveyards an awful lot quicker? You've only got to have one like mine, a rear end, and your whole front end's crumpled under a protection zone. So there's like £2,000 replacing the whole front end of the car.
Oh yeah.
But
Whereas
you didn't
if I did that in an old TR6,
I'd much rather the car be crumpled than me.
Yeah, that's the sacrifice.
but you didn't have to do that in the old days, Adam, because I remember I had a very old Ford Cortina, and I accidentally reversed into an alleyway without seeing the concrete posts that stopped people reversing into the alleyways because I wasn't watching properly. Now, when I did it, and this was back in the 80s, the back of that Cortina just crumpled and disintegrated. And yet I remember my friend came to pick me up and tow me, and he said, well, watch this, Rob. And he did exactly the same thing in his old Triumph Stag, which had like 6-inch girders built into it. And he just bounced off of it. And there was just a bit of paintwork scratched. Because
if he had done that at like 60 miles an hour, it'd have been a different situation.
Well, then you get dentures.
and that's the idea of the crumple spaces, is that the car is supposed to absorb the shock, because otherwise you're absorbing the shock because you're the gushy stuff that's gonna get bounced around. One thing I forgot to mention about the poll that I probably should have mentioned, but I don't know who it was. Somebody did suggest this poll, and I wanted to give credit, but I don't know who it was. So if you have any suggestions for any future polls, you can reply to me on Telegram, Discord, or Matrix, or send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. Right, Nate?
That's right. Or anything you want at linuxsaloon.com. Just like that. Anything you want at linuxsaloon.com.
But that was a nice segue back to that poll. And I was the guy who asked, where do we put comments in if we've typed in other? And it was to do with Vim. And for me, Vim is exactly the same as we were talking about a moment ago. Vim is for all of us people who like to tinker and mess and learn and work out how to do it. Yeah, I can't be bothered with all that. I use Nano because all I want to do is very simple changes. I'm not a tweaker. Yeah, so just give me a little simple, well, not a tweaker on scripts and all the rest of it. I'll mess with my systems and blow it up and muck up monitors and all the rest of it, but I've never been a scripty person. So I just want something that will open, give me very simple controls to understand. But I get why Vim is such a powerful tool and why it's enjoyed by programmers and serious script tweakers. It is so ridiculously powerful, but you can get lost in it. And I'm not just talking about the old meme of how do I get out of Vim, but it's got so many ways that you can do stuff. It's just mind-blowing. It really is.
Yeah, this might be a little shallow, but I don't particularly use Vim just because it's not very cute. Like it just doesn't like satisfy me, like visually. I'm a simple animal. And yeah, just being in Vim, it's just a dark, scary place, and I don't like it.
So what's your editor of choice?
I just use like Gedit or something like that with like nice little buttons. I'm not gonna. That's really. I like the like the line highlighting and the like. If I highlight a word, it'll like quickly show me all the other things that are already like in the document, or it'll give me like tab complete stuff. Like I know like you can add extensions and plugins into Vim and set all that stuff up, and it's sort of there. It's just if I can do the same job but also be satisfied as a simple person I am, I will take that. That'll be my my path.
I got so used to doing things in a graphical editor that even though Vim is so powerful, and I did spend, I sort of made myself spend a couple weeks really sort of learning, using the keyboard keys instead of the arrows, and learning the ways to jump back and forth, between the beginning and end, and selecting multiple words, multiple characters, and to the end, and to there's a certain the Vim tutor basically. If you do all of those basic learning all of those basic capabilities from there, then you can expand out and really start getting into plugging things in and different capabilities that exist. And it really is quite a rabbit hole. It goes pretty deep. And watching people, if you find a video of someone coding in Vim that's an expert in moving around within Vim, it is pretty impressive. The amount of sort of productivity that you can get out of just not having to touch a mouse and not needing to use sort of those traditional desktop interface tools where you're just sort of doing everything within the editor. And yeah, it is a skill. I mean, it really is. Like, you have to sort of hone that skill, and there is a payoff to it if that's what you do. I'm not a programmer, so I don't really ever need to be that proficient. But I respect the idea that this capability exists, this tool exists, and the people that choose to can really go pretty deep and do impressive things with it. So
Adam, you brought up a great question in the Zoom chat that the rest of the viewers don't get a chance to see. And would you care to elaborate on that?
What kind of loser would spend years learning Vim and then use it at work? Me? Yeah.
Didn't you do a stream some time ago about was it your Vim workflow that you did, or was it something?
I might have, yeah.
Oh,
I was just showing it to you guys here. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I think it's really impressive, like what you've done with Vim. It doesn't look like, in my mind, what Vim is, but you made Vim.
All credit.
Awesome.
That's not me. Like, there are many people who work on. Oh, sure. I guess you could consider them distros of Vim. And that most of the stuff that I use is actually from that distribution of Vim.
Yeah,
it's called Lunar Vim.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's pretty great.
And yeah, I didn't mean that you personally crafted, but you took the pieces like you built a Lego set and say, I like the Lego set you built, not the one that was designed by a bunch of engineers at Lego and tried and tested by.
I would say more that I took something that was already built and put the minifigures where I wanted them.
Well, okay.
That's about the amount of effort I put into it.
Well, at least you put the minifigures in it. You didn't need them.
Great. Well, no, I mean it's really one of those things. Like, sure, there's plenty of people who don't need to bother with it. I get that. It's whatever. I think it's rad. I think it's really fun to use. If any of you have ever played like a real-time strategy game or something, and you're like having to hotkey everything, it's almost like playing a real-time strategy game every time you're editing text, because you just feel it just feels awesome to just clack 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 and everything's flying all over the place and words going here, things changing here. It gets that part of my brain that like just jives with it, right? And yeah, like there is a cool factor, right? You feel like you're Hacker Man, typing away and stuff, right? Like it's fun, but it's also really useful at the same time. There's a lot of like Vim motions, as they call them, that you can do that speed things up. There's a lot of like you were talking about the plugins, like there's tons of plugins in there that you can use to, like there's one like Vim Surround is a pretty common one for surrounding text with quotes or parentheses or brackets or whatever you need to. So like you don't have to go to the beginning, insert a bracket, go to the end, insert a bracket or any of that. You could just like put your cursor in the middle of stuff and throw brackets around it.
That's cool.
Just little things like that are really, really useful. And I also think it is useful to learn Vim because it's everywhere. VI and Vim are just everywhere.
Right.
That pretty much anything you go into is gonna have it. And at least knowing some basic, I mean, yeah, sure, you don't need to like know the esoterica behind everything, but going through Vim Tutor and just kind of like understanding the basics is useful because it doesn't matter what system you're on, you're probably going to have VI. And
to include the
so
old,
it's kind of nice to be able to get around that.
Include the old Unix systems too. Like you can go back
right.
and you can go back and you can be comfortable in the old stuff.
It's also on space capsules, just for funsies, like the operating systems that it's there. So that's cool.
You can go to space.
That's pretty awesome.
Vim, and you can go to space.
Right. You can go to space.
That's why I have Lunar Vim. Come on, man. Right. It's in the name. Yep. But no, yeah, it's really quite an awesome like thing to learn. I think the plugins, there's so much stuff you can do with it that it to the point where, like, I think you had mentioned, my Vim setup doesn't even look like Vim, right? Like you look at it and you're just like, this is Vim, this is VI, right?
He's actually piping Vim through what is it, lolcat? That's what it is.
Right, yeah.
So what is the difference between VI and Vim?
I think Vim just has like some extra stuff. So I think Vim includes like the plugin system. I don't think VI has plugins.
Right.
Like there's an entire like Vim script like language that goes along with it as well.
Because I've had lots of systems that have don't have Vim, which usually surprises me, but they do have VI, and I find often that VI is just Vim. That's just the name of the binary. So if you do VI, you'll see it. It starts up as VI improved. Gotcha.
There are a lot of times where it's actually that.
That's what the M stands for. Yeah.
Yeah. It's VI improved. Yeah.
I thought it was for like extra stuff.
Vim improved.
Well, like Vim and Vigor, right? Like, yeah. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, it's really useful. If you edit code often, you can make it into an IDE if you want. Even if you don't, just editing config files, like once you get really comfortable with it, like just being able to search, like use the search to go to the thing you need to change, like CIW for changing inside word, change of value, like just being really quick about even just little config file editing can like just make all that process really pleasurable, I guess, if that's the right word. And there are a lot of times where we're tinkering with something and we have to go in the config file over and over again, because like we're still testing things and understanding like how to maybe open up a terminal buffer within Vim so you don't have to keep going outside of Vim to edit your stuff or that kind of thing. Like there's some extra stuff in there that maybe it's useful. And the home row thing is always the one that trips people up, like not using arrow keys, like using HJKL and all that. Like that really kind of takes a while to get used to for a lot of people. But once you do, like you'll find that you'll go into something hitting J or K to like go up and down and you're like, oh yeah, this doesn't work here. But there actually are a lot of programs that use VI bindings. So like if you pipe something into less, like if you use less to look at something, less uses VI bindings. Like you can do HJKL to move around. You can do / to search for stuff. You can like actually interact with it much in the same way you do normal mode Vim. And there are a lot of applications that have those.
Yeah. There's a bash mode for Vim, for VI movement.
I accidentally learned that a lot of things have those sort of Vim shortcuts because I think I was looking at a log file of some sort in systemd, and I couldn't close the log file. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know what to do. And I guess it opened up in some like weird like Vim control mode. And like apparently, yeah, you just use Vim commands. I was like, okay, cool. No instructions or anything. But I think not System 76's the pop shell thingy. They use Vim style controls for their tiling manager, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of the hotkeys for that are like H, JK, all that stuff. So
Yeah. And I mean, Vince has been learning it as well. So what about you, Vince?
Yeah, it's been cool. I've been trying to force myself to use it more and more often because, like Vim, it's really not the most intuitive of programs, right? I think we can all agree with that. Something like Nano, like where you've got all the shortcuts there on the bottom, anyone who hasn't really used it before could probably work it out. But with Vim, the whole keyboard shortcuts thing is really something to get used to. Vim Tutor is really great for teaching you the basics. And then you really got to do your own sort of research to figure out what other keyboard shortcuts there are. But I mean, luckily, I have my own virtual Adam Grubbs construct to show me some of the cool stuff. That was really great of him. So it really also is for someone who aims to be keyboard centric, aims to be quick at that, not having to take your mouse off the keyboard. Your hand off the keyboard to use the mouse. But lately I've been finding that, that pleasure you're talking about, that sort of being able to do stuff really quickly. Part of that also, I think, is being able to pull an esoteric shortcut out of the dark recesses of your mind and go, yes, I remembered that and I can do that. But yeah, I mean, moving sort of chunks of text around all over the place, it's like magic. Pretty cool.
So you said Adam is like your Clippy, helping you out?
Yes. It looks as if you are trying to use Vim.
I see you're trying to do something most people wouldn't. Would you like help?
Except Adam would probably be slightly more condescending than Clippy.
Only a healthy amount.
I think you've really got to have a reason to use it, to get to know it. If you don't have a reason, it's going to be difficult. If you're doing something that requires the use of that on a regular basis, then I think it's probably worthwhile getting to know. But if you're not, it's going to make it quite difficult, isn't it? Unless you just...
You want to know what my reason was, Colin? Because I thought it was neat. Nope. I just thought it was neat. I was using VS Code happily. No problem at all. There's no reason I needed to use it. But I'm like, you know what?
Okay.
That looked cool. Let me just do that.
And
that's what I did.
So you just spray.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So you just went out to learn how to use it.
Yeah, because it looked rad, and that's really it. Like
rad.
I don't need like a rationale or anything. It's just, hey, that looked really cool. I saw this dude like flying around in the terminal thing. I'm like, I want to do that. So it did.
Now you got to bear in mind.
He secretly wanted to join the Matrix.
I think got to bear in mind that the guys who are flying around Vim like that have probably been using it for years and years and years. It's going to take time.
That is true.
Nothing worth doing was easy.
I think the fact that your reasoning for doing it is because it's neat is probably the best reason ever. It's neat.
A little side note, I think a lot of people do things because it's neat, but then they feel like they have to justify it, so they make up some like reason for whatever. Oh, like it's more efficient, it's more this. Just say you like it, man. Just be honest.
That's fair.
Yeah, those might be secondary reasons. I think it's neat, and I'm slightly more efficient doing it this way.
So I was going to mention the VI was initially created in 1976, and VI is a screen-oriented text editor originally created for the Unix operating system, and Vim was initially created in 1991. And Adam already said Vim is a contraction of VI improved.
Oh wow, that's very clever of them.
Vim proved, like Nate said. Vim proved
is.
But if anybody ever has a hankering for watching really clever people work and blasting around screens, jump on one of Martin Wimpress's little hour things that he does during the day, and he just blows my mind. I mean, I don't know half the stuff that he's doing anyway, and I might recognize one command in a million. But the fact that he's got like 42 tabs open with various bits and pieces, and he keeps grabbing stuff from every other and any screen and whacking them in the one he's got and then compiling it and going, no, that don't work. I'm just like mind blown at how these people work. And that must be what you saw that time, Adam, when you saw these guys with Vim or Vi, whatever they were using back in the day, that it is just astonishing, truly astonishing.
I would I put one of like Martin's old streams up on like my TV once and just muted it and just sort of like left it like moving around as like a live wallpaper. It's honestly incredible.
I wanted to ask what y'all thought about that quick reference, the visual quick reference from K Computing. Anyone want to give some feedback on that one?
I think
I'll put the link in the chat again. Okay, Eris did.
Perfect.
It's a PDF.
Oh yeah, that was awesome actually.
It's really handy.
That
That's
was-
that's something I think you need to print off and almost like fold into a box or something, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty handy, I must say.
I found that one a couple of years ago, and of course someone shared it with me, but you know, I was working at a security operations center, and I ended up printing these and having them laminated and put them on all the analyst desks. And I said, look, I don't want to have to remind you what these commands are again. And this was the cheat sheet that helped me understand how to move, navigate and do some some quick things. It's certainly not everything you can do, but it's the one that helps me.
Now, you see, for me, that is a beautiful example of a clever person dumbing things down so that anybody and everybody can just see the basic commands. One tip, though, don't stick it as your desktop paper, because the minute you open up V as an app, you're not going to see your desktop. So don't do what Ryan told me to do with i3 when I was trying it out one day.
That's funny.
Back in the day, this was really more before too many Linux desktops. This was more just command line stuff, so.
It's definitely being saved and put somewhere where I can remember where it is if ever I do decide to hurt my brain one day.
Yeah.
It's from 2005, so that's pretty cool.
And nothing has changed.
I just love that the letter Y in my mind stands for yank. That's courtesy of Adam as well.
Yeah, that's actually what it means. Yank.
It's pretty
they don't have
useful.
copy and paste. They have yank and put. Yeah, it's something.
That is beautiful.
Just don't let anyone see you hitting Y too many times.
I was once called a yank by a Dutch fellow.
That's an honor. That's what a.
Yeah.
It's always fun when I don't know what it is, but like hearing like anyone say like Yankee or yank, but like with any European accent, it just tickles me. I just think it's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Very funny.
I'm deliberately not saying yank or Yankee.
It's totally fine if you do.
Yep.
But not all Americans are Yankees, though, right? Is that
yeah,
right?
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, folks
that's
in the
true.
South would not take kindly to being called that.
Yeah.
But does anybody here know the phonetic alphabet, the way it was originally written? And then the fact that you had to take out India and Zulu because it was considered to be offensive. So you now have to say indigo and zebra. And yet they left Yankee in.
Wait, isn't Zulu the guy from Star Trek?
Wait, when did that happen? Because when I was flying, we said India Zulu.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's just in the UK or in Europe, but I was using it back in the early 80s, and we were told that we had to stop saying India and Zulu, and we had to say indigo and zebra.
Weird, yeah.
We could still say Yankee. It's ridiculous.
I learned 10 years ago, and the phonetic alphabet here still is India and Zulu. Yeah.
Yeah, and my mind still says that today, but it's ridiculous how people, and yet somebody just talked there about Y for Yankee, yank it out and stick it somewhere else.
People need to
interchangeably.
Relax. Honest to God, like people just need to like find a hobby, like settle down.
They need to learn Linux. That'll keep them busy.
Like, not everything in the world has to go over fine-tooth comb with the PC comb, like, oh my goodness, someone might take offense to this.
I'm not sure what's offensive about Zulu.
They're Star Wars fans.
It's so dumb.
It's a group of ethnic people.
all it is it's a way to not say the letter so that someone understands what you're saying.
We use
because if you said Z or Z sounds like C or T or B or G.
You know what? They might mistake it for Hulu though. That's a
that
common
could be a problem
now.
yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So Zeb, when I learned the phonetic alphabet for the military, we used Zulu in India.
Yeah, absolutely.
same
And
here.
for me, that's still the proper way to do it. And that's how I learned it when I was going to become a police officer way back in the day. But yeah, it was just something that suddenly came out. As I say, early 80s when we were suddenly told to change it. Yeah.
Well, whiskey, that could be misconstrued. We probably shouldn't have that in there.
The temperance movement has a word with you.
Come on, that's terrible. Golf.
I'm personally offended by people who say Z.
Excuse me, lads, it's a Z.
It grates my chain. Exactly, Jeb, right?
My name is not ZBD boss, it's ZBD boss. But the number of times it gets pronounced as Z. You're right, Zeeb?
It's not Zebedee?
It's not Zebedee, no. And then I made the mistake one day of saying, well, it's Zeb, like Deb. And he went, oh, you're female then. Like, yeah, great.
Oh, goodness.
You're such an effeminate voice.
Don't some people as well call it Debian instead of Debian?
Yeah,
or Debian.
Yeah.
Or Debian if you really want.
We used to make fun of people for that. Yeah.
I can think of one in particular.
There was somebody, like someone who I was watching some tech YouTube thing, and they were just very smart about so many things, like just really spot on, really knew their subject. And then they said Debian, and I'm like, well, I'm done now.
Oh man, I will admit that sometimes it'll take me a very long time to warm up to somebody's content if they pronounce like certain Linux terms like differently. I'm like, ooh, this is gonna rattle in my brain for a little bit before I can
Debian is my
fully
safe word.
absorb.
Genome.
Isn't it a silly thing to get all uptight about though? Because
Oh yeah.
We've had aluminium for years, but why you guys call it aluminum? I've no
Aluminum.
idea.
But no, we actually spell it differently. So I looked this up the other day because it was driving me crazy. Because you do not pronounce the way we spell it, aluminum or aluminium. I was like, you couldn't possibly misconstrue this as being aluminium. And then I looked, and it's because it's actually spelled completely differently.
Yeah, exactly. Like
we don't say color.
Their judgment has been coloured.
Right.
Yeah, and because it's
Sounds
not
like
colour, the pronunciation is colour. But there's so many things like this in everybody's languages that it's just. I actually get stupidly excited about wanting to learn the differences between why people say aluminium and aluminum, and you've just explained now, Eric, why, because you spell it differently. But it's when you go back like in time and a long time ago when why words changed and how they changed and what caused it to change. It's really fascinating, and it's a rabbit hole that I can suddenly find myself going down, and then 8 hours later I'm going, oh my goodness, I better get some work done or something.
So I can give you a quick little shortcut to a lot of that. Is in the early colonial days of America that a lot of the English that we spoke was pretty much British English, right? Because we just came from there. And when it came time to make our own dictionary, like the Webster dictionary, they just they were so they hated the Britain and England and all that so much, and they're like, I'm gonna start hacking up the words and make American words. So there goes the U in color, there goes aluminum, which wasn't a thing at the time, but all these different words they just started hacking up to make American versions of the words that it's not the king's word, it's our word. And so that's largely why a lot of our words are spelled and said that way, because they were just man, we hate these guys we just fought for a few years.
Yeah,
I'm always wrong.
And I always said in chat as well.
I'm always spelling colour wrong. Zeb will probably know that too, because we OUR, and most dictionaries now will pick it up as an OR, right? So it's always incorrect spelling
Well,
it.
only incorrectly printed dictionaries. But as someone pointed out in chat, let's have a quick straw poll here now. Yeah, who says gnome and who says gnome?
What about genome?
I used to say GNOME on purpose
Gnome.
because it was like, well, that's, and then when I heard one of the key people on the GNOME team say, you know what, it's not even worth discussing anymore. Just say what you want to say. It doesn't matter. And also, nothing else is pronounced that way. So if the word is supposed to be gnome, then it's gnome. If it's supposed to be GNOME, then say it's GNOME. But no one's ever going to say it that way. So I honestly just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm just going to say gnome.
That's entirely the reason I do say GNOME and not GNOME, because
Yeah.
GNOME is a desktop, GNOME is a little creature.
Well, they're spelled the
So
same.
like that's like my way of my way of discerning between the two.
I think we should
And
scrap them
And
both.
I
just
actually
say-
have a little story about that. I kept saying GNOME, right, to a coworker who had no idea what I was talking about, but I kept saying GNOME because I just do it reflexively. And then like he's looking at me the whole time, and I stopped after. I was like, "Are you okay, man?" He's like, "Do you know you're saying it GNOME?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, "It's spelled GNOME, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know that's pronounced gnome, right?" Like, oh, he doesn't know that it's a desktop. Like he doesn't know what I'm talking. He thought I just
He
didn't
doesn't-
know how to say the word gnome properly.
That's hilarious.
That's right. He just didn't know how to say it.
Yeah,
I think
he's
it's
still GNU around here.
I think it should be spelled with a soft G, so it's genome. I think that might be more.
Genome. I'm just
I've got a bit
imagining
of
because
a
he says he.
on,
Oh, go on.
I've got a myth on pronunciations of the Americans, because and it makes sense. When I was back in the day when I was learning, pronunciations, you got the at, the but, the k, but use the at all the time, because fast, can't, right? Because we say fast and can't, but if you say can't real quickly, you can't get it wrong, right?
Garbage can.
If you say can't real quickly, then you could it could be a completely different word,
Yeah,
right?
it's a very
probably-
different
Just
word.
so-
Yeah.
But honestly, there's enough variation in pronunciation of the English language. So even within the British Isles, even in the United States especially, there are so many different ways. I was listening to someone from like New Hampshire or something earlier today speaking, and it was just like, that is so different from the way that anyone else talks anywhere. It's just so unique. And they don't say a lot of their words the same way as even people in this country, let alone another English-speaking country.
Yeah.
So to say that, like, and I guess it's that I was listening to something, what did I watch? It was some like old BBC program or something. Yeah, it was like, I was watching Secret Life of Machines. You remember that BBC4 program from like the early
program.
80s or something?
Yeah.
Love that. And I rediscovered a remastered version of it the other day. And yeah, it was the beginning of television, and the woman that they had on there was speaking, that very clean broadcast English, the like perfectly pronounced. I can't do it, but and it's, nobody talks like that. Like literally nobody I've ever heard in Britain in any context speaks that way for like in real life, in broadcasting, in maybe in the theater, something like that. So they're even the Queen's English or the King's English, like it's still, there's so much variation in there. And I was saying, like I watch a couple Brits who are very Cockney, and they have like these really funny little ways of speaking and throwing in euphemisms and all this crazy stuff. And English is, having learned it as a native speaker, it's hard for us to understand just how weird it is to non-native speakers. And I've been learning a lot of Spanish, and I have a lot of appointments. A lot of my medical staff are from other countries, from Spanish-speaking countries, and to hear them talk about learning English, like how difficult it is, and even today, like they don't consider themselves really native or let's say fluent English speakers, because they run into weird things all the time that they can't account for. Like English is such a strange language. It really is.
The one thing that annoys me the most about English is where you have the same word spelt the same way, but meaning totally different things when used in the context of a particular sentence. But if you want an example of extremes when you're listening to the British accent, listen to somebody from London and then go and listen to somebody from Newcastle or Glasgow.
Okay.
It's just mind-blowing.
I love those northern accents. They're always so satisfying.
Who's the one?
No.
Black. He's a dark-haired. He's the real smart-assy comedian, and he does a whole thing on accents. Like he's, like one of his big bits is all about. I'll see if I can find it. Jimmy something. Jimmy.
Kimmel?
I can't. No. He's
Jimmy
from-
Carr.
Jimmy
Oh,
Carr.
Jimmy
Thank you very
Carr.
much. Yeah, Jimmy
he's
Carr does
hilarious.
a whole thing on like goofy accents and how this person would say something, and it's so much fun to watch because I don't really know it as a native speaker, but I've heard in movies and television and videos and other things, like it fascinates me how much variation, because it's not like it's like I can get the US and some like other countries where there's so much distance between people. You're talking about a variation in language, very tiny little distances apart comparatively to the US and other large places. Like, how is it so different?
And that's the rabbit hole I was on about, Eric, that if you were to go and investigate and try and Google everything about why those differences occurred, it is mind-blowing when you get back down. And the other thing that's crazy as well is you will then find 4 different reasons that everybody believes their reason is the right way. And it's when you go and look for words as well, like when you talk about the nitty-gritty of something or the son of a gun, you try and go back and find out what they actually mean, and then you'll end up with 3 or 4 people who know this is the real meaning of it, and then somebody will come along and say, no, this is the real meaning of it, and trying to find actual facts nowadays with the internet and so many people able to alter and make suggestions and changes to Wikipedia and the like. Very, very difficult to get down to the real truth of the matter.
Yeah, I think if you use a word long enough, Zeb, if you use it enough, they'll stick it in the dictionary.
Also, Eric, I could be wrong here, but like, I guess if in lack of distance, you would have time, right? Because like folks been inhabiting that island for a long time. Whereas like in America, we've, only really been a nation for, a few hundred years.
And I guess our concept of distance today is so radically different from even 100 years ago, when going 50 miles was like a big deal. My daughter and I, we've been reading Anne of Green Gables just as it doesn't matter, just because it's from that time period when they talk about, like going to a different town and it's like a day's ride and it's only, 20 miles away, So I could see maybe how in the time that those accents developed, that even though it's 20 miles, like that's far enough away that.
And the effect of radio and television is pretty big.
Yeah.
Like I know, like I grew up in the South, right? And everyone there, they talk like this. It's all good, it's just having fun in the South. But I don't speak like that. Why? Because I watched so much television and all that as a kid, right? And so I got a general American accent from television more than I did the Southern accent from my peers. So
it's so funny you say that, because I actually was just talking to a friend from home, and there is such a distinct, believe it or not, for Southwestern Pennsylvania, very sort of Southern bit of an accent there, combined with a little bit of like a Pittsburgh accent. It's a really weird, very specific accent. And how I don't have it, I guess, like you're saying, like I just made a choice at some point when I was young enough that I didn't want to sound like everyone else around me, because I knew from watching movies and television and everything else that normal people didn't sound like that. And so I didn't want to sound like that. And every now and then I'll say something that does harken back to that in certain company, and they'll go, oh, I know where you're from. What did I do? What did I say?
Eris, your hand has been up for a bit.
I found this website that has like aluminum products, and in it they talk about the origin of the word, and just to give some context. And it said that the English chemist Sir Humphrey Davy named the metal, deriving the name from the mineral called alumina, I think. This name was taken from the French, who had based it on alum, a white mineral that had been used since ancient times for dyeing and tanning. Sir Humphrey was not immediately decisive about the name, initially calling it aluminium in 1907. He then changed it to aluminum, and then finally said an aluminium. No, the first one's aluminum, and then he changed it to aluminium, and then he changed no, I'm getting mixed up. So initially he changed it to aluminum, and then he changed it to aluminum, and then he changed it to aluminium in 1812.
So he's the reason for all our problems.
So that could be the reason why we don't have guns.
Well, and let's also not forget that why the US can't get rid of the imperial measurement system. Like, why are we still using Fahrenheit? Why are we still using pounds and miles? And, because we're stubborn.
It's like
because even though the UK changed in 1971, I've no idea how far 10 kilometers away, but I know exactly how far 2 miles is. And if you give me £2 of sugar, I know what you're talking about, but I don't want a kilogram of sugar. And yet I've been living with metric since 1971. There's a whole generation of the UK that refuses to give up pounds, ounces, miles, inches, acres, yards.
Yeah. Do younger generations still use the old imperial system or no?
My kids do, because I can't understand them if they don't. But everybody else uses. Literally, it's almost like I guess it could be a 60-40 split. 60% do use it and 40% don't. And what's interesting is if you go down the old farmers markets, they've all still got all of their scales in pounds, because they didn't want to have to go out and buy a whole new load of weights that are kilograms and grams and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's a real fun mixture.
U.S. government uses a lot of the metric system.
Sorry, I was recently watching a Veritasium video, and the US is actually officially metric according to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. But what they do is they then convert everything to imperial so that people can still understand it.
Yep.
So the whole system is based on metric. Everything is defined by metric. So an inch is based on the metric system. Nothing is made by itself. So that's why we are using the metric system, because everything is defined by the metric system at the beginning.
It's just pre-converted.
Do you think it's because that maybe the English or the imperial system is just more organic feeling? Like it's units that make sense. Like a foot, I know what the size of my foot is. Things like that.
I think it's hard to picture. It's hard to picture in metric if you don't use metric a lot. Like
I think it's really just a thing you've always used, so it seems more natural. Whereas if you'd started with metric and always use metric every day, then the imperial system would feel clunky, right?
Yeah, it could be.
Well, being a tool, I worked with both, because most of the machines in tool making were all in inches, so that sort of made sense in a way. But then some things made sense working in metric. So it's bizarre, but
I mean, just to have a system based on rational increments of numbers, like a mile. There's such arbitrary numbers for imperial that, I mean, even though I'm used to it. So the one I think I could get rid of weight and length. Even I could probably get into kilometers. Temperature is so hard for me to think in Celsius. I don't know why. It's because there's not a 1-to-1. It's not like, it's not like it's the temperature just slightly lower on the scale. It's actually a different scale. And so, you guys are like, oh, it's 3 degrees Celsius. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
It's cold.
I know it's close to zero. So it has.
Yeah, that's cold.
Right. But then when you say it's like 30 degrees Celsius, you're like, oh, that can't be that much. No, it's like a hot day, right? Like,
right. Yeah, that's a very hot day.
If you want a really quick, dirty fix, So 10C, double it, add 30.
That's it. That's what I do. Yeah.
But in reality, the closer you get to 0, as in 0 degrees, it changes, and the higher you go, it changes. But a real dirty fix is double it, add 30. Yeah. Or if you want to be pedantic, double it, add 28. So that's a simple way to work it out. So 10C, double it to 20, add 30, it's 50F.
Okay.
Well, I think that
I can do that.
The reason I like Fahrenheit more than Celsius for everything except for doing calculations, like physics calculations, is when I say it's in the 90s, I know it's a hot day. If it's in the 80s, it's kind of hot. 70s is pretty comfortable. 60s is getting kind of cool. Like to me, it's the temperature increments of 10 in temperature are easier to to understand, like what is exactly.
Feels more granular.
It's more precise because Celsius is usually range. Celsius doesn't have like decimal usually given out. Like when you give you the temperature, they don't tell you it's like 10.5 degrees or something. It's always like 10, 11, 12. And it just seems like there's more range with Fahrenheit, I think.
Well, yeah, because you got 0 to 212 for boiling water when you only have 0 to 100.
Right.
I think there's.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Oh no, go for it.
Oh, Fahrenheit is based on 32 degrees is based in 0. The reason 0 is because it was when pickle rind froze. And when pickle rind froze, that's when people would go out into their, the cold cellars and try to make sure that their food wasn't going to go bad a million years ago. That's why they cared about 0.
Hey, Nate.
It's pretty cool.
In the last like 2 or 3 shows when you've been editing, how much like Linux did we cover?
It falls under open source.
I love it. No, it's all great conversation. I don't care what anyone says. This is great. So
I can use just about any unit of measurement probably fine once I get used to it. Like it doesn't really matter to me too much, but I do very much like Fahrenheit because it depicts very accurately how it feels on that granular scale. In a range that like we actually experience. So like 0 to 100 is a thing where I live. Like it's not like and we go over 100 too. But I know that if it's 0, it's really, really, really cold, and if it's 100, it's really, really, really hot. Whereas like it technically yes is a little arbitrary, but I think you can very easily associate the way each number feels much better than you can with Celsius.
But again, that's only because you've grown up with it, because you talk about 0 here. Yes, it's really cold, 0 degrees C, yeah? But then when you go up to 25, that's getting to my comfort level. And then when you go up to 35, that's just ridiculously hot, because 35, double it, add 30, you're talking about 105F.
I was actually raised with Celsius. Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my family used like metric for like everything. That's why I'm fine with like kilos and stuff. I just don't do well with Celsius for some reason for weather.
But then the thing is, I feel like if you do the 0 to 100 and like let's say 45 is like we're about to die because it's way too hot outside. You have like 55 more numbers that you're just never using in your daily life other than like cooking, I guess. And so like the actual temperature of like your area is not. So like 100 something is like a hot day or a normal day in Arizona. And like anything beyond 100, like up to 212 for like boiling water, that's like the cooking scale. And then everything basically 110 and under is like human scale, like everyday, scale kind of thing.
Yeah,
so to be fair, sorry, go on, Zeb.
No, you carry on, go on.
To be fair, 100C is also very hot. I mean, I'd be dead, but it's still very hot.
Right, you're very right.
It's fine. You guys keep talking to yourselves. The rest of the world just talk to ourselves, and we'll be happy.
So when it comes to things like 3D printing and anything like technical, I prefer the metric completely. So like, to me, like when I crank my bed temperature up to 240 degrees, or the head temperature, not the head, the nozzle up to 240 degrees Celsius, I get it. That's the temperature I need for melting ABS effectively. and I usually have the bed cranked up to about 100 Celsius. So again, to me, that makes perfect sense. I like it. And if I did that in Fahrenheit, which I have like initially Home Assistant converted to Fahrenheit, and I really didn't like it. Like I just couldn't understand it because it did make sense for something for an engineering perspective. So I think I can go both ways with it, but I just, when it comes to how the temperature relates to me as a human, I prefer Fahrenheit. When it relates to the machines or the technology around me, I much prefer Celsius, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And there's a perfect example, Eric, of where double it add 30 doesn't work. Yeah, because 240 C is 464 Fahrenheit. Well, double 240 is 480 straight away. So
That's
if you then add
terrifying.
30, that's 510. So the higher the scale you get, doesn't work. But
Worse off it, yeah.
in normal everyday life, double it
Yeah.
add 28, double it add 30 will get you in the ballpark figure.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic. Thanks for that. That just made my life a lot easier, actually. So
I think I'm okay with accepting that the entire rest of the world might be better with certifications of measurement than we are. Like I accept this. I'm not very prideful on that front.
Why do you hate America?
Well, here, okay, so I've been looking at this Slim Jim for a bit, Adam. You see, and they don't call it a meat stick either, by the way. It says, quote, smoke snack stick. I don't think there's meat in here, but it does say U.S. inspected and passed by Department of Agriculture. And if this passed the test, we probably aren't in the right space.
Depends on the test it was put to.
They might have been measuring in metric.
If the test was, does it kill human, yes or no, then yes, it did pass.
It passed.
If
it did, in fact, kill them. Yeah.
Are you gonna snap into a Slim Jim?
This is my third one today.
Look, man, how can you possibly dunk on a snack that was endorsed by Macho Man Randy Savage? You are.
Oh yeah.
You do hate America.
Oh man. Tell you what, I can feel the atherosclerosis just in my veins. Just
I wouldn't worry about it.
What do you think happened to all the What do you think happened to all the asbestos we had to remove? Just saying.
That's about right.
So,
where did they put it all actually? Because it's fire resistant, right? How do we get rid of it?
Well, there's a continent like south of Europe and kind of southwest of Asia that a lot of people send things to they don't want anymore. Probably there.
Dude, probably. Yeah.
Australia, yeah, that's a good place for it.
Hey Nate, I'm gonna send you a map real quick.
Oh wait.
I mean, apparently we're a bunch of criminals.
Yeah. So what? Who cares what happens to them?
That's right.
Oh, you said southwest
of Asia. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking. I thought you were dunking on Vince. Anyway.
No, I do that in every other opportunity, but.
So speaking of irresponsible, does anybody here have an issue with being irresponsible with your browser tabs? Like, do you let those things grow wildly out of control? Like you don't get rid of the tab and it keeps going and going and going?
Nate.
I just buy more RAM.
You don't know, man. Like I see Nessa's browser tabs and these things are like millimeters, going back to metric, millimeters in length, like in width. She has like 1,000 tabs, and I'm just like, you can use the same tab. Like you don't just like just hoard away the tabs. Like, and I'm like, oh, she's like, I'll go back to it. I'm like, when? Because all I see are just more and more and more. And you know what? Like I upgraded her RAM, and that was really the solution, because it really was that she didn't have enough RAM to support her tab hoarding habit, and I don't know what to do for her. I don't know. Like therapy is just not an option. It's just, I don't know.
But when the tabs are that small, how do you know which one was what?
So you can actually search tabs in most Chromium based like Control Shift A, I think is the keyboard shortcut, and you can just search through the tabs. But at that point, I just gotta wonder, why didn't you just hit Control L and just use the same tab you're already in?
Just like getting, more RAM so you can stuff more tabs. I've got this monitor that's about 49 inches wide.
Yes,
and you can fit so many tabs on that monitor. I'm telling you, it will change your life. You can, I can see the titles of at least 100 tabs. It is perfect.
So I know that this is widespread enough of an epidemic of like tab hoarding and such that the browsers now, like Edge and Chrome both do it, where they will like sleep tabs that you haven't touched in a while just to save you some RAM, because they know people have like a roster of tabs they never come back to, and it's like, we're saving you from yourself.
So I curate my tabs. I have a simple tab groups in Firefox, and I currently have 65 tabs open, but that's over, let me see, about 15 groups. But
why?
Why? Because I will tell you, Zeb. Because I work on websites for a living, and I have a tab group for all of my customers. And so when, my hair salon guy calls me and says his websites need something, I go to his tab group. I've got his website, both the admin page and the front page, as well as usually any of the hosting related stuff, like stuff that I need to get to. But along with that, I also have an add-on called Auto Tab Discard, which if I haven't used a tab in 15 minutes, something like that, it puts it to sleep, which means it just gives the memory back. So even though I have 65 tabs open, only about 4 of them are active at any given time. Oh, and also pin tabs. So I have pin tabs. I probably have about 8 pin tabs, like email clients, messaging apps, stuff that needs to stay active. But even though I have that many tabs open, because I have them in groups and I have that auto tab discard, it actually does not use very much memory. And it's so useful that I can, because I can have all that open, it just saves me so much time to be able to flip back and forth. And I use it all. I mean, I've had it this way for years. So if it ever goes away, I'm going to be in really big trouble, because this is just how I'm used to using a browser. And then also on top of that, Firefox.
Which browser? Firefox.
I wasn't even aware that this browser sleep thing was there, because I very rarely have more than about 6 tabs open. But I was trying to see if I could open up 100 tabs like Schickle was on about. And when I got to the 21st tab, Brave said, "Oh, memory saver frees up memory from inactive tabs. Do you want to turn it on now?" Well, I'm going to hit no, because I'm never going to have more than half a dozen, because I don't do that intensive stuff. Even when I was at work, I'm working on 3 monitors and doing the stuff that I did on 5 or 6 different systems. I'd only have a maximum of 1 browser open for each system. I get the fact that lots of people need them. I've just never had that type of workflow that requires that. And you're right, Schickle, you can open up 100 tabs quite easily, and I can still see the word new tab on every single one of them. It's just absolute madness.
It's incredible.
The greatest browser in all of history doesn't even have tabs. That's Internet Explorer 6. It doesn't even have tabs.
I was going to say, do you remember life before tabs?
Yeah.
Every window was its own window. Oh, that was madness trying to find one.
Yeah, and also you didn't have very much memory back then, so you didn't really open too many of them windows.
Kind of forced
Eric, you mentioned the groups. Are you using the container tabs thing too? So like you're signed into the different. Oh, that is handy. Oh, okay.
And simple tab groups just recently, like this year sometime, made it so that you could actually say, for this tab group, always open it in this container.
Oh,
so they've integrated with it. Oh, tab containers. So Firefox, what is it?
Container tabs.
That is why I can't leave Firefox. I mean, I like Firefox anyway. I'm just I've gotten used to it. And when I use a Chromium browser, I'm not like Vivaldi I like, but everything else I'm just kind of But yeah, those container groups, the fact that I can have 2 tabs next to each other, one is one group and one is the other, all the cookies and everything for that group is completely separate from this group, and I can be logged into the same site with 2 different accounts.
Oh
and
man,
it's so beautiful. There's nothing
that
like
is
it for the work I do. Like you just,
perfect.
I don't know how people use Chromium-based browsers and do the kind of stuff I do. If I had to log out and log back in a bunch of times, it would drive me crazy. Like,
Yeah.
They just develop a different workflow though, Eric, don't they?
I guess.
Yeah, so I use both Chromium and Firefox pretty heavily. And one thing I do with like Chromium is I set up different profiles for different functions, but there's very specific functions. Like, so for my my kids on the school computer, they each have a Chromium profile that has all of their stuff in it. And so that's very easy to handle for them, a multi-user, without logging out, logging back in, because that's inconvenient. And so they can type their things or whatever it is very easily. And I can have I have one open on each virtual desktop, basically. And so I can just change between them. But now for me, that doesn't work great for me. And like most of my things that I do, I prefer everything in Firefox. And I pin a lot of tabs. I have lots of tabs pinned because I go to those tabs so frequently. And that keeps growing because I go to them so frequently. And I'm thinking maybe these tab groups might be a way to do it. So like everything that's like for all the different services that I have running here at my home out here, I'd like to be able to have a group for that. So like my home assistant, the 3D printer, the lights control computer, all those like different controllers, the firewall. It'd be nice to actually have all that just kind of grouped together. And so I think that might be a winner here. I'm going to check out simple tab groups and see how that goes.
That's really nice. Yeah. As soon as you brought up like, each, client having a different thing, like I'd never even thought about that. But like, yeah, if you're logging into like, even if it's the same access panel, but for different users or for different people, yeah, you'd want that separate. But not being able to see it without logging out would absolutely drive me nuts.
If you were to go down the Chromium route and have all those profiles set up, you wouldn't just have the one Firefox window open. You'd have a Chromium browser open for each of your profiles for each of your customers, and that would be so much less efficient.
That's horrible.
It would be really messy. Yeah, for years, I've struggled with what's the best system for keeping track of tasks, or I still have a lot of bookmarks too, and I know people don't really use bookmarks very much in browsers. At least that seems to be the trend. I love bookmarks. I use them all the time, and it's a way for me to group thoughts and like, I'm working on a project, so anything relevant to that project, I create a little bookmarks folder and I put all that stuff in. I also have their tab group and just anything relevant to them. When I work on a website, one of the questions I always ask is like, do you have any competitors, or do you have sites that you really like? Either how they look or how they function or something about that. And I use that as I use them as inspiration in a lot of cases, just to kind of see what bases I need to cover. And, I have all of those contained in that group. If I had to open them every time I needed them, it would just be really inefficient for me. And so to be able to have these groups and also contain everything, it's a really great, I don't know if anyone uses it exactly the way I do, but I think Michael Tennell might. I think he and I have sort of talked about this. I think he might even have a video about this. But yeah, it's a good system if you use a browser like I do, which is constantly, just for basically everything I do almost.
So I'm a Chrome user, but that might be changing soon, just because that's a really good feature. But I usually have a decent amount of tabs on it, and the way that I sort of work my way through it, and I probably could do this a little smarter, but I use a lot of YouTube, maybe too much. But I'll open up a video and I'll see like a suggestion, or I'll like open the YouTube tab and I'll see a whole bunch of stuff. I will middle click on everything that I want to see, and that'll open it up in a new tab. And by default, everything that I middle click on will open up chronologically. It'll set it in the next thing. And so I have a queue based on a sort of like timeline of what I've seen and in what order I want to watch it. And if I open up a new tab to the right of all of those, and I'm doing something else and I start doing the same thing where I'm middle clicking content, everything will be separated into these little subsections of like chronological like points of interest. And anybody that would come up to my computer would have absolutely no idea what's going on. It just looks like I'm just got a bunch of crap everywhere. But I know where all the crap is, and that is how I manage my tabs. Is I just like, it's just like a little timeline, a little stringy daisy chain of everything I've seen and in what order I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's how my mind works. Sort of that logical breadcrumb progression, and that's how I take notes. It's everything that I do is sort of wrapped around that link, that connection between things. So
something interesting that I only recently discovered a few days ago, Google Chrome has a feature called Journeys. So it's kind of like a rethinking of how we do browser history. So, when you look at like browser history, it's like chronological usually. So in this case, they group the browser history based on like maybe a search you did or a site you went to. So when you go into your like journeys or whatever, like say if I search for like, I don't know, Linux Mint on YouTube, it'll have like a group of all the sites that I went to that were related to my search to Linux Mint. So like all the videos I might have visited on YouTube in that whole search or whatever, and like it groups it together. And so that's sort of like a kind of automated, like kind of chronological thing, I guess. And like, you don't have to necessarily like make a, tab group and all that. But when you go into the journeys, like there's like the 3-dot thing that everyone uses, and you can click that and you can actually open all of those in a tab group like together. So if you have this sort of like, you have this sort of dynamically changing and adjusting like group of things based on your behavior rather than some explicit organization thing you did, which is kind of handy, I think.
That could be super useful for research projects.
Right. And
like
you don't even have to like explicitly, create a collection or tab group or anything. It just kind of does it. It's pretty great, but everyone hates Google. They grab your data, blah blah blah, the usual whatever. But it's a neat thing.
Well, I'd be lying if I said I didn't continue to use them. It's one of those like abusive relationships,
It really is. I always think, there was a world before Google and Apple and
the dark ages, yeah.
Well, the idea that there was IBM and other big companies that sort of ruled the stock market and ruled the technology,
Xerox,
all this stuff. Yeah, and like, what's next? When is the point? Will Google decline? Will Apple decline? Will they succumb to some larger, more powerful trend? Will there be another company that comes in and does a similar thing better? Like, we live in the moment, right? And we kind of, it's hard to imagine the world without Google or without Apple, without these companies, Facebook and the rest of them. Like, I can see Facebook failing within my lifetime easily. Just like all the other systems that came before it. I just feel like anymore, these companies, they have become very sticky. They've found ways to dig roots into everything in our lives. It has made them more and more difficult to sort of supplant. And I know we joke about Google and we joke, privacy and all the rest of it, but I mean, it is becoming more and more difficult to actually achieve that, right? To say, I don't want to participate in this. I don't want, to exist in this, with all of this technology around me. Like, there's no way to get away from it. You can choose not to use it, but that doesn't.
Well, I'll tell you what, part of it. Eric, here's a nice test for you. Yeah, the next time you sit down at a dinner party with 6 adults or more, yeah, just say to everybody, right, let's put our phones away for an hour and see what happens at that dinner party. Will you actually end up having conversations rather than 8 people looking down at their phones doing
Nope,
stuff.
they'll just leave.
It makes for a very interesting evening.
Yeah.
An idea that I'm fascinated
Conversation.
by. Oh no, go for it.
No, sorry, I just made a statement. I'm always out of line. No, you go.
I was just saying, I'm always fascinated, even if you ignore the sort of the sort of like integration with all of our data, like personally, and how much of all of that, you know, is so sticky, probably because they're using biodegradable plastic. I think that a lot of it comes down to timing, and it comes down to reaching a sort of like a maybe not a critical mass, but there's probably a better term of what it's capable of and how much data there is. So Google doesn't just, you know, provide us a search engine. They're like the backbone of the internet itself in a lot of ways. And you know, and there are other companies that are a part of that, but it's almost like they're, even if they didn't handle user data the way that they do, and that wasn't a core part of their services, I don't even see them going away just purely based on a like, well, you know, the internet runs on Google's you know, with Google's grace, essentially. And you know, not trying to say, you know, like Cloudflare does a whole bunch of stuff. You know, there's other companies, but yeah, just the timing of it and how widespread it is. You know, it's not like MySpace where it was like, oh yeah, it exploded, but like, do we depend on it? No. I don't know. It just blows my mind.
No, you're right, because I mean, Amazon would be another one that's the same way, where it's like, well, it's a e-commerce site, and it's like, no, Amazon really isn't that anymore. I mean, it
No.
obviously it is, and you know, a lot of us use it, but Amazon is way more about the services they provide, right? And so much of the world exists on Google, Amazon, Azure, you know, all of these sort of providers. But and in that sense, yes, they've made themselves very sticky. To touch back on what Zeb said, I've thought of that as well. Back when phones became something that people were carrying and using more frequently, like I had a job where I kind of had to have my smartphone and sort of had to check in on things. And I remember if I was to pull it out during dinner or anytime where we were sitting in a room together speaking, or, you know, anytime I basically chose to divert my attention from the social engagement I was in to a device, that was considered rude, right? And it was noticeable. People would say, could you believe he played with his phone during dinner? Like that was people like that was a thing. And now I go and I sit in a waiting room at a doctor's office with people, and I'm not kidding, you know, and I'm not like saying age is the determining factor, but normally you think, you know, the older generation, I'm talking people who are like in their 70s, 80s, you know, and I'm not saying like ancient people, I'm just saying people who were not part of the technological, you know, boom of the 2000s and all of that. Like everyone in the waiting room, if there's 40 people there, 38 of them are on a device. That just blows my mind, right?
Right, but I don't want to interact. I never wanted to interact with people in a doctor's waiting room. I mean, like, that's a bad example. I understand if you're at dinner with somebody, but it's like, hey, buddy, about that colonoscopy, right? You know, just
but
it's not like, okay, it's not really something I'm gonna do.
But what about an airport? What about you know, anywhere where people? I swear, I used to have just random conversations with people, and now it's like you feel weird.
I've traveled to London for 15 years on the same train at the same time in the morning with the same 6 people in the carriage. And I think we had 2 conversations the whole 15 years.
That is the most English thing I've heard today.
Correct. And it's bizarre because I get on that train now and I get in that carriage now, and there's obviously a few different people, but everyone's on their phones. But you bringing up the doctors, what annoys me the most about our doctor's surgeries in the UK, and I don't know if it's because we've got older technology, but as you walk in the door, there's a huge sign that says, please turn off your mobile.
Really?
And yet every
Yeah.
single one of the younger generation is sitting there on their mobile phones, and anybody over 40 had the courtesy to turn it off.
That's very interesting. See, there was a time here where they would say that, and I remember in the 10, 15 years ago, they would say, please, because they interfere with the machines, or they'd give different reasons. But yeah, it was, please don't use your. I mean, same thing at the gas pump, right? There are these huge signs where they would say, don't use your mobile device. And now, my gas station of choice has an app that you're supposed to use to turn on the pump.
Right.
You have to use your phone.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And like I use like tap to pay at the pump all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, no, Wawa, if you're anywhere on the East Coast in the US, Wawa you use their app and you save money.
That's cool.
By
I think the point of the no phones at the gas pump was like, don't be distracted while you're like pumping gas so you don't spill gas everywhere and kill yourself.
No, I think that. Well, I mean, that could have been.
It wasn't interfering with the pump. It was really we just need you to focus on like putting gas in your car.
It could ignite the fumes or something.
Yeah, they claimed it was static electricity. Yeah.
But this was back in the days when you used to have to get the old crank out and wind up the battery, and then once the spark started flying, the phone worked. Yeah, so I get that. Yeah.
Gas pumps are also much safer now in general. So like the nozzles are designed to like keep some of the fumes from escaping, and there's a lot there were a lot more fumes flying around 10 years ago than there are now. That's for sure.
Does anybody
they smell great though.
Does anybody have the where you can automatically just click it on and it just fills itself? Because they took that away from in Australia, where it was just
like the little latch thing that you like.
Yeah. You got those over there or not?
Yeah, we still have them.
You do.
Isn't that supposed to be a
we still have them.
No, they took them away in the UK.
Like, you can get away
They
with
took them away,
isn't it?
Yeah, they took them away in the UK. You can't do that.
Yeah, same here
Just...
in Australia.
So you have to hold it, like squeeze it the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
That would hurt my wrist.
Yeah, like I have RSI. I'd never be able to pump my gas. Like,
mind you, I think some of our biggest tanks are like 45 litres, whereas you guys have got 245 litres.
What's that in gallons?
Yeah, it's
kind of math trick for that one, Zeb?
That's about 11 gallons, I guess. Well, that's only because when you go to the pump, it's all in damn litres, isn't it? So, I mean, I remember the days when it used to be 50p a gallon for petrol. I mean, now it's what, 128 a litre? I couldn't even begin to guess how expensive that is or it isn't, because my mind still goes into gallons. But no, they took away those click and drop it and forget it years ago.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that would never fly here. I mean, people would literally.
There'd be riots probably.
Our tanks are.
Well, I remember.
Gallons.
So
well, it wouldn't work in America, because how would Jason Statham have fights at the petrol pump if he had to hold on to the pump the whole time?
That's true.
Well, the thing is, back in the day, when you used to pump your petrol, you'd lift your hood and you'd check your oil and whatever while that's filling up. You can't do that anymore, right? So that's.
What, they don't let you do that either?
They just look at you funny.
Pumping your fuel though first,
Yeah. It's wild.
Check it at home is easy. Yeah. But just going back to what Eric was talking about before. I seen someone in chat, it was Joseph, I think, mentioned that Microsoft were trying to make Firefox use Bing. Is that correct?
His question was, is Firefox switching to the search engine to Microsoft Bing on Linux? I haven't heard that.
It's speculation. I think Microsoft said that they were interested in it. And since the contract is coming up for renewal with Google, I don't know if you remember, but Firefox used to have Yahoo as the search engine. And and then before that they had Google. So it's always a possibility they could switch over to Bing, but I guess, like I told Joseph, it all comes down to price, probably how much money they're willing to pay Firefox or Mozilla.
Right, and at this point it's just speculation. It's sort of like contract's ending. Could it be? Yeah.
Samsung did the same thing recently. We could use Bing, and everybody was like, "Okay, bet, try it." They're not doing it because that's going to be a huge issue considering it's Android, and everybody's going to be signed into their Google accounts, and then they'll also have to sign into a Microsoft account.
Admittedly,
So it's like,
Samsung has been courting with Microsoft for quite some time, right?
that is true, yeah.
So, you know, they were
That
the
could
first
also
with like
be
the
another
phone
good
link
poll
thing. They
for
were
you,
first
Iris.
with Game Pass and all that stuff.
It's a good
That
poll
is true.
idea.
Yeah, sorry, Iris, you could actually do that as a poll as well for one of the shows. Which search engine do you use by choice? Which search engine do you go in and change your browser to? Because they all have their favorites.
I will say, and this is wishful thinking. I think Firefox is cute. You know, I like a little flaming fox. But you know, I mean, you know, Microsoft and Firefox, you know, working together to save the internet. Yay, woo! And maybe they'll rebase on the Firefox engine and not Chromium, but that's not going to happen. But man, boy, what a world would it be?
Nope. If Firefox would focus on making their browser as performant, there is absolutely a difference. I don't care who you are. Like,
Oh yeah.
Unless you're running some kind of, I mean, even if you're running the most amazing equipment in the world, Firefox is absolutely slower. But I don't care because it's way more powerful for me.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
I will say something that I've and you know, not to be like, oh yeah, we'll just get a Mac. But I will say that I've noticed much less on a Mac the difference, and I don't know if that comes down to just because the SSDs are like implemented differently, like, you know, like everything is basically like running in swap anyway at that point. But I definitely notice it a lot less when I'm using Firefox on my Mac than I do when I was using it on like Windows or Linux.
I wonder if it's the virtualization, honestly.
Maybe
does Mac do a lot of with virtualization of the application.
Like, are you talking about like the Rosetta thing?
Well, no, I mean,
I think it's native now.
Yeah, because it's native now.
Is it all native? Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Mac use Safari, right? So
by default, yeah.
We're talking browsers, right? So you'd have to think that's tuned into because they tune everything into their.
Yeah, but they're totally different rendering engines.
Yeah, but Safari, even on Mac, Safari is not very fast. I mean,
no,
the Firefox is actually faster for me than Safari, which is, you know, it pains me to admit because I really like Safari, but nobody uses it. So
you guys remember when Safari was brought to Windows? Ugh.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah,
this was a long time ago. Yeah,
I used
Safari
it.
4.
I used it.
Yeah.
I would have used.
I used it just to be weird.
I got a quick anecdote. The biggest difference that I've noticed between Firefox and Chromium is when I'm running it on the PinePhone, because it doesn't have a lot of power, and Firefox seems to be the choice for all of the PinePhone distros right now, and it is profoundly slow. I mean, it's pretty bad, and the UI doesn't particularly conform well with the screen. But I install Chromium out of just the regular repos if I'm on Mobian or maybe Postmarket OS, and Chromium is just, I mean, it's awesome. Once it boots, it basically feels like a regular phone. It's that fast, and it's easy to use the UI. So. You know, it's a testament to Chromium, but yeah, it's hard to beat Google money, I guess. So if I give an excuse there, that would be it.
You know,
it's interesting you mentioned.
Sorry,
go ahead. We're probably going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I was going to say you're talking. Well, probably not, but you're talking about the money thing. I think that's the biggest problem that Firefox has right now. Is like they're having to divert so many resources into something like, you know, the upsell, the Firefox VPN, and all these other deals and stuff, that it seems like the focus is not that it's not on there, but it seems less on like browser optimization and stuff. Though they've done some recent things that have improved things, it's like you don't exist in a vacuum. Like Chrome just doesn't stop improving, right? It's just
well, and everybody uses it now, and think of the feedback they're getting from downstream back to upstream with all of the like bug fixes and improvements, and like there are so many people using, not just the people but the end user, but like all these different browser creators, you know, and they're all giving that feedback back up to to make Chrome and Chromium better. And Firefox just doesn't have that user base, doesn't have that money. It's a company that just makes a browser extensively. So it's not like Google, where Google just happens to make a browser, which if they didn't make, would it make any difference to their bottom line? No, not really, probably not.
Mm.
Right, and it's kind of a feedback loop, right? Like if you make a browser that's faster than the other, people are going to use that browser, and then the other, it means that there's less people using. Well, here, like when Chrome like first came out, like it was significantly faster than the others, right?
Right.
And it took a while for people, like I think it came out in like 2008 or so. It wasn't until probably about 2012 or 2013 where like a lot of people started using it, and like people started using it because it was significantly faster than the competition,
Yes.
especially Internet Explorer and stuff, right?
Yep.
And then at that point, you've taken away the user base from the others. And so then when people go like, oh, what browser should I use? And it's like, well, this one's like the de facto choice because it's the fastest one and all that. But it's because it's the de facto choice is why it will always be the, it's like you get that kind of that feedback loop of, well, people keep going to Chrome because it's faster, so less people are using Firefox. Well, Firefox can't catch up because less people are using it, but they're not using it because it didn't catch up.
It was Firefox's game to lose. And if you think back to Firefox before Quantum, it was so bad. It was so bad and so slow. I remember my wife trying to use it because we loved Firefox, but it just got so, like, as websites got heavier and relied more on JavaScript, and like it just got so unusable. And I remember switching her to Chrome. She's like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a new browser. It's Google's browser, and it's trust me, it's just a lot faster. You'll be fine. You'll like it." And that was it. That was the moment when like Firefox lost, and I came back to it years later, and I just wanted to try it again because I'd started getting back into Linux a lot, and like it was the default. And when I'd install Linux, I would get rid of Firefox and just install Chrome and be like, get on with my life, because that's what I was using. And finally, Firefox got good enough, and now I think it's very close. Like, yeah, when I say it's slower, like it's definitely slower, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was back then.
No, absolutely. But let's not forget still that we are a bunch of enthusiasts talking about the other enthusiasts that we talk to. But think of it in your lives. How many people do you know that don't realize that Google isn't a browser?
Yeah,
that's actually funny to think about.
People say, what have you looked it up on the internet? Well, I looked it up on Google. Yeah, no, that's a search engine. Well, that's what I open. No, you open Internet Explorer, or you open your browser window. Yeah, it's Google. We've got to remember, and that's why they've taken over as well, Adam, because all of these computers that get built and installed will have now Microsoft Edge on them, and the de facto browser is Edge, and it uses the Chromium backend. So it's going to be virtually impossible for Firefox to get back into that market.
Well, I don't think Firefox needs to compete with Chromium directly, because it's a bit hard to beat Chromium at their own game. But if you're a small company trying to compete against a larger one, I think it's kind of truism that you need to play to your advantages. And if you're small, one of the advantages is you're very agile. So you can do experimentations and you can play with different ideas. And if I just throw one out, we were having a discussion in Linux Saloon because one of the members is building a VoIP app. And one of the problems is being able to do KVM remotely. So normally you'd use something like VNC or you'd use TeamViewer. But if you wanted to do it over peer-to-peer WebRTC, like something like Jitsi, there's no real solutions for that. But if you're a browser, you've already been installed on the operating system, and you could make an API that would allow securely a way for people to give KVM access over WebRTC. That's something they can do. And if they did that, it would be so simple to implement for other people. People would install Firefox just to use that feature if they're dealing with perhaps a support call or something like that. So that's just one example. But yeah, it's just Firefox needs to be agile. and I'm not seeing a whole lot of that from them. But if they could do that, then that could make the difference.
Yeah, that would be nice. I know there's a way to do remote access in Chromium, but I've done it in the past, but I haven't, not in a while.
Like keyboard mouse control of the remote machine.
Yep. Like TeamViewer, but using Chromium. Or Chrome, I
Wow.
should say.
Well done, Chromium.
Yeah. So it is.
If you install an extension of software, I think that's how you can get it to work. But if it's native, yeah, I'm impressed that they did that.
Yeah, you have to install. I think there's some other support things you have to install, but it does work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if that would work with Firefox too, assuming it, those tools are compatible with it. But just having it be like the customer doesn't have to install anything. All they have to do is click yes on the prompt that shows up in the browser. That would be something.
Well, it is past time, and this is the worst part of the trying to figure out what we're going to do next time. So we're going to be off next week. I'm going to be on a little bit of vacation, but the week after, it's supposed to be a distro exploration week. I was thinking maybe also a desktop environment. I don't know. Or there's been a lot of new things that are released. There's a new Fedora now. I think there are plenty of Ubuntu's to talk about. Joseph DeGarmo was talking about his experience between GNOME and Cinnamon and how he felt like Cinnamon was a little bit slower than GNOME and such. I thought, that'd be kind of interesting to maybe play around with those desktop environments. I don't know. Lots of really cool things going on out there in open source land. So what are some things that maybe you would like to try out or give a whirl to? Anything sticking out? Schickle?
I'm not sure if anyone's as interested in this as I am, but I could do a quick overview of how open source is coming along with AI, in particular self-hosting. So I'm not going to be talking about ChatGPT or any of the online services, but what you can actually install on your local computer and use.
Really?
If that's interesting, it might be like, yeah, it's totally far away from anything anybody wants to hear about.
Well, it is.
The scary thing is, I think it's the way of the future, and the more we can start to learn about it, the better. So I'd certainly be up for that.
Yeah, well, I'll give you guys something now because I didn't have a chance to get it in, but there's a link to the forum in YouTube. Basically, if anyone's interested in self-hosting their own AI, I just uploaded a complete custom install guide for hosting stable diffusion, and that will allow you to create images on your GPU. And it's my own custom blend of stuff, so it's actually it's pretty high quality. And if you need help, just post on the forum or visit the Telegram, and and you'll get help. So I can go into more detail
awesome.
next episode. I know we're out of time.
That is really cool. Yeah, I would like to definitely bring this up again, but does it require?
Yeah, I mean, everything I bring up, I will give you guys an install guide so you can do it yourself.
Yeah, does it require NVIDIA to be able to do that?
Yes, you can. There's ways that you can do it on an AMD card or on a GPU that's 4 gigabytes, because you really need 8 gigabytes of RAM. But it's complicated.
Okay.
So if somebody really, really needs help with that, I'll see what I can do, but that's a tough call. For AI,
8 gigabytes of the GPU, right?
Sorry, say again.
Just to clarify, it's 8 gigabytes for a GPU.
Yeah, 8 gigabytes of VRAM is highly recommended. You can get away with 4 gigabytes because there are special models that are quantized down to the point where you can run it. But from what I see, most of the models that come out tend to be orientated toward 8 gigabytes or above. So yeah, if you're getting a card, definitely get 8 gigabytes. But there's ways you can make things work with 4. I mean, there's some AI you can run on a CPU. Like you can run AI on a phone now.
Yeah.
But it's about speed, and it's about what the models are designed for, and there's also a quality problem if you're really quantizing them down to run on light hardware. They aren't particularly all that great. So it's there's a trade-off.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's very cool. I mean, I do have a 2060 lying around that I could probably play with.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in trying that. I've used a lot of AI on different systems, and they're just starting to want to charge. And I feel like, especially for images, I'd like to try more with like making my own stock images for websites and stuff. But like, they charge you for every iteration. It's like, oh yeah, they'll give
Dude.
you. It's so expensive.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's cool seeing all the new AI stuff coming out, but it's like, just what can I self-host? That's what I want to do. So all my energy and research has gone into self-hosting only. So that's yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is. We should actually dedicate a because I know that Eric loves talking about AI. It seems like you should probably like plan something out. Maybe in 2 weeks, with distro or I don't know, unless you want to maybe explore this. What are your thoughts here, panel?
I would
Do a
definitely love to
StrawPoll.
hear more about it. It seems like the kind of thing that like is happening whether we want it to or not, right? Everything I touch has AI getting involved somehow, right? Either, sort of under the covers in the background or very overtly right in your face.
Yeah.
And like, I would rather be ahead of it and understand it a little more and know what I could do myself than needing to just basically rely. Because I feel like it's a gold rush right now. Like everybody is trying to do something with it to see what's going to stick. And, I don't know. I think I would like to know more about it. So that sounds very interesting to me.
I still think it's the latest crypto.
The new blockchain.
The new blockchain, yeah.
Except that it actually is something useful.
Yeah. All the crypto bros turned into AI bros.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and that's true to definitely some degree, but I also think there is a legit value to even just normal people. Blockchain was a esoteric technology that, geeky people got interested in, but normal people couldn't care less about. Whereas this, I actually think a lot of people could find value in actually using. They won't call it Chat GPT or generative AI, or they're not going to use those words, but they're going to know that the tool they use has this ability to let them type in a few words and then they get this output.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what's actually going to happen. And I think a lot of people are going to use that.
It's a real interesting thing for sure. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about AI since the 90s.
I'll tell you guys some cool stuff. Yeah, I know we're out of time, but yeah, I can. Just the stuff that I can tell you guys, it is just so cool. Things are moving so incredibly fast, and there's even ways that you can use self-hosted AI that's more powerful than ChatGPT. But yeah, there's a lot to get into. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun, and yeah, as I say, everything that I say, I will post a guide so you guys can do it yourself.
Let's do that.
Awesome.
Let's make in 2 weeks.
I think it'd be a good idea, Nate, but next week when you're away, the week after you're going to come back, we'll do that desktop thing. And then that gives Nick a bit of time to work out his plan. Because I know what it's like myself. When you get onto a subject and you want to talk about stuff, and then you go rambling and I end up just going completely off tangent. Whereas something like this, I think it needs a really good structure behind it.
I actually already structured out some things I was going to talk about, but there wasn't enough time today, so I can punt that to next episode.
Sweet.
Plus, I'd have more to talk about next episode anyway, because I need to. Well, okay, I'm starting to get into it, so yeah, I got to cut it off. Yeah, it's whenever you guys want, or whenever during the episode, just let me know and I'll start.
Actually, I was thinking, so it's 2 weeks away, the next episode. So maybe let's do that. Kind of we'll do like an open discussion, or maybe make it like, so it's clickbaity, self-hosting AI superior to the others or something. Or is self-hosting AI better than something else? I don't know. I'll think about it. We could do that, and then the iron's kind of hot right now, so we'll see where this goes. I think I'll have to set something up. I do my server right now has an 8 GB AMD card running. I would have to spin something up with the NVIDIA card. So it might be, if you have like a there's an AMD version. You said there is.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're really
it's like you have
confident
to
on
use
that.
special flags, and it's very much in its infancy in the AI world in general. So
Okay.
trying to eke out like the way to do it with just one particular model is like, it's very janky.
So maybe I'll have
yeah,
to.
I'm not sure if I could give you a success on that. Plus, I don't have an AMD card. Otherwise, I'd test my way through it, then give you the instructions.
Right. So maybe I'll just set up I'll scrap some things together. It'll look like a Franken computer with an NVIDIA card in it, and see how that goes. I'll probably do it. I'll distro hop for this one. I won't do it on openSUSE Tumbleweed. I'll do it on openSUSE Leap. So it's a pretty big leap for me. Alrighty.
Yeah, seems like a big miss for AMD to not be in the mix on that, but
well,
anyway.
All right, AI discussion. Make sure I put that. All right, so 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, we'll do a little playing with AI, and if we run out of things to talk about, then it automatically becomes an open mic / news night. So there's always that. And if nothing else, we'll start talking about food or the metric system or any number of subjects that have nothing to do with Linux. It'll be great. Tip top.
Or crumple zones.
Or crumple zones in a car.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if you have any suggestions about topics that can take this completely off the rails, send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. They are more than welcome. But that includes any suggestions around distros or applications or polls. Anything you think we should talk about, send them suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can tag it in the Matrix, Discord, or Telegram. How come I lost my mind on that one? Just tag Eris or myself, and then we'll put that on the list. So suggestions@linuxsaloon.com or some sort of live chatting, active chatting platform. Any of those, it's fine. Or even in the YouTube, you can actually put it right there in the description in the YouTube. That'd be fine as well. All right, so it is time for last call. I think. Did I miss anything? Nope. All right, we're good. Time for last call. Eric, you are on a podcast called Distro Hoppers. What are you working on right now for that?
So I think we will be recording the next episode next week, which will probably put it out, episode 43, sometime the next following week, the week of the 29th. So it'll be our normal monthly discoveries, foibles, the things we tried that didn't work out, successes, and then we'll have each of us will have a distro. I think I'm going to go with Kubuntu, like I mentioned earlier in the show, where I just can't seem to shake it. So I think it's been a good month of using it so far, and I think I'll talk about that. Unless something amazing happens in the next week. So,
which could happen. You might have like an AI-based distro punch you in the face and say it wants your milk money.
It could happen.
So I got a message from Steve today. He's going to be taking basically a summer break from the Coffee Clash and everything else. So make sure that you tell Steve you miss him so that he comes back. So, but he's, I think 4 weeks he's going to take down at least. So that's just an FYI. Mark, you have a fantastic group of experts called the Atlanta Linux Enthusiast Group. Are they meeting next Sunday?
All right. So yeah, the Atlanta Linux Enthusiasts meet every Sunday from 3 to 6 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And you're welcome to join us. There is no set agenda. We typically just offer help and talk about Linux and open source. Again, everyone's welcome. We meet online through Jitsi, and you can get more information at ale.org. Again, make sure you, as you ask your question, make sure you get your answers. And if we go down some rabbit hole into some other topic, make sure you get the help you want. So you do have to manage your own help. But again, it's 3 hours, join at any time. we've got various folks there from different backgrounds. We've got people that do Linux from day to day as their day job. We've got hobbyists. We've got retired folks. And certainly you're welcome to join in and get some help. Thanks.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. Are you guys going to be meeting during Self? Just curious if that's...
Yes, the meetings still continue. Sometimes I get back home in time, but I probably will be on the road. So
okay.
But yeah, every Sunday, unless it's like Christmas or something.
Okay. That's probably a good choice.
Yeah.
All right, I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. I missed part of it because I was coming home from my work trip, so I show up like halfway through the podcast. So that's fun. Talking about our different workflows and how we use Linux. I have a website called cubegold8.com. Check it out. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. Check out shows like Destination Linux, This Week in Linux, and Sudo Show. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of the conversation, both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact, especially when the stream dies. That's always nice. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Oh, you're muted, mate.
First blooper. Not rolling for 10 years.
I think, Nate, I don't know if anybody else is hearing this. I think your audio might be crackling.
It's crackling. It is. It's definitely
Okay.
crackling.
I'm eating pizza, so I thought it was just me.
Okay.
And I could do some pizza right now. That'd be great.
The audio any better now?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
It comes and goes. It is that all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea.
Only when you're
on.
talking. It's interesting.
Okay. Well, I'll just stop talking. You guys can go.
I think it's working now. I think it's good.
Yeah, it sounds all right now. Yeah, sounds better.
Well, what happened was, for a reason, it's a Bluetooth headset, and all of a sudden it just disconnected, and everything just kind of went a little nutty on me, and don't know what happened. This is not a common occurrence. So I had to rapidly mute, and I bring it back. So who knows?
Sorry, Zed. Sorry, Zed.
Do
I
younger
might
people,
listen. I
do
might
younger
listen
generations
1500
still do that or
kilometers.
no?
Say again.
Yeah, just on what you guys
My
said,
first
I was
cut
recently
miles,
watching.
kilometers.
Nah,
I don't
Adam,
think
I've
I
got a
have
tip
more
for
than
you.
6. Yeah, go on then.
So
Yeah, and
it also
Alex,
becomes...
Mark, just do it perfectly like every other time.
All eyes on you.
Okay.
It's because we've gone too long.
Now.
That's right, we've gone too long.
He's run out of minutes.
Your calling card's out of minutes. That's right.
So I was going to
Can't
say,
believe I lived through that.
we have.
All right, cool. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Oh yeah. A lot easier to do that with folks, right?
So we were talking about the AI thing earlier. I wanted to bring up that I do contract work for the school system still, and they had